And we respectfully acknowledge that we live and work in Mi'kma'ki as steward of the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are all treaty people. The agenda, I don't have any particular changes. I don't know if anyone else does.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Public input, we have 15 minutes. Anyone? You're on for an appointment at 9.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to another matter.
Oh, okay.
Input session. Thank you.
I just wanted to.
Is this doesn't this is the chair? Shannon Black, 65 Duke Street. And the reason I'm taking up some time in the public input session is because I wanted to talk about Spectacle Lake and Council's vote last week. So I, among many other residents, was not aware about the public information meeting held on the Thursday of race week, which is arguably the busiest night in Chester during August and possibly the entire calendar year. I'm not sure what the outreach was by staff on that. I have seen that it was in the calendar, and I've seen when you click on that, I can see the announcement there. But I would say that outreach was not effective for an issue that's as important as this. And I mention this because I have watched the video from the second half of the meeting last week, which I was not in attendance for. And I did hear you say, Mr. Warden, that you didn't expect anybody would be attending the public hearing that's been scheduled for October 10th in the morning. I mean, and you mean residents as opposed to landowners, as Mr. Vino pointed out, that they'd be here. But I'm very concerned, actually, that that timing and this location is not adequate for the amount of public engagement that will result from effective outreach, which, if I have to, I will undertake it myself to make sure that people understand. We've just gone through a land use bylaw process that was fraught, but what is really clear is that residents are concerned about their water supply. Now, Spectacle Lake is the only identified potable water source for the village of Chester at this point. Its viability is something that it's kind of a term that hasn't actually been defined. Is council defining viable as being adequate for the entire population of Chester? If so, no, it's probably not going to ever be viable. But if it could be one part of what Ms. Crawford referred to last week as a portfolio of water solutions for the village of Chester, Spectacle Lake could play a critical role in that. I mean, recently in the news was information about a reserve in southwestern Ontario suing the federal government because they don't have drinking water, safe drinking water. What they do have is a fill-up station. And who knows where we're going in the next 20 years environmentally in terms of the water table. We really just don't know. You've heard from Mr. Vino about the uncertainty of drilling wells and whether you can ever tell what you're going to get until you drill it. We know that wells are going dry in the village on a daily basis, and I'm sure council is hearing about that. If we are looking at a principled, cautious approach to water supply in the village of Chester, we would not be lifting the watershed protection zone right now. We would be waiting, council would be waiting until an alternate viable potable water source was identified. And to my knowledge, there isn't one. Now, whether that protection zone should be lifted down the road once an alternate viable water source is located, that's a legitimate conversation to have with the participation of the entirety of the community with effective outreach. So that's, I don't know what it would take for council to change the timing and the location of the public hearing, but I will volunteer to circulate a petition, and I will collect as many signatures as I am told I need to collect to convince this council to conduct a public hearing in a way that really ensures public engagement on an issue that is actually critical to residents. It's just that they have been completely consumed with the land use bylaw issue, which only was voted on last week. Okay, so I'm only getting up to speed with this, and I tell you, I had a sleepless night last night after watching the video from the discussion last week, and I'm going to tell you why. It's because I know maybe a little too much about this email. So this is the email that is relied upon to justify lifting the protection zone from Spectacle Lake. This is initially an email from Mr. Blair sent to Ms. McGuire, which is then forwarded to Mr. Sturdivant. And as you'll see, there are 9 bullet points there. And this is what is referred to in the announcement of the public information meeting as being new evidence. But the reality is, these bullet points are based on the 2011 assessment that was completed by the hydrological assessment, which I can't remember the name of the company that did it, but in 2011. I've confirmed that with Mr. Blair, that Mr. Wynot and Mr. Hood drew from the 2011 report for this list of bullet points, okay? So it's not new information. If there's anything new in there, we'll get to it, but thank you to Emily for putting this up because I wanted to go through this point by point. So the first point that council is relying on is that existing shallowness will necessitate berms of 0.6 meters in height to increase the lake water capacity. What the report actually says is that construction of a low berm along parts of the lake's southeast shore would be necessary if you wanted to raise the lake's height by 50 centimeters or so. So it's just a portion of the lake. The way I read it written here, it suggests that it's the entirety of the lake. And then point 2 says this would be an expensive exercise for a maximum of 2,000 properties. Okay, so that seems to be where they're drawing that expensive conclusion from, is the cost of the berm. There's nothing here in this email that sets out what the cost of the berm is. There's no survey, nothing. There's no material here to justify that assertion. So that's
You're assuming that point 1, point 2 relates to point 1. It doesn't say that.
Oh, okay, well that's how I read it, but regardless,
That's
if
not
point
what
2,
it says, though.
okay, well it does talk about expensive, the expensive, no, that's the only point about the expense of it. And it would be an expensive exercise. We know that from the CBCL. And that's why the council, I think, has gone looking for groundwater rather than surface water, because this is an expensive option. However, it is the only identified viable potable water source for the village of Chester at this time. And it should not be sacrificed to mixed use and general basic or whatever the other zone is, because once it's gone, it's completely gone, okay? But this would be an expensive exercise. To Mr. Vino's point, okay, maybe that's just a general statement, but there's no information in it. It's not saying, and also it's factually wrong because we're looking at 2,000 to 3,000 residents, not properties. The lake would be prone to blue-green algae blooms due to its shallowness. Well, that is mentioned as a consideration in the report, but there's not been any blue-green algae blooms in the lake, and because of the watershed protection zone, that is something that inhibits blue-green algae blooms, okay? So as far as the statement number 4, that's a misstatement actually of the Nova Scotia government webpage. They summarize it as blue-green algae, water sources with blue-green algae should not be used. Okay, first, we don't have blue-green algae in Spectacle Lake.
We don't monitor it.
Exactly, that's another point. This is not based on any current testing. There's no new data here. This is not new evidence. This is old evidence, okay? So then there's an extrapolation from a satellite study by NASA. That's hypothetical.
Ma'am,
And the point is-
this is a 15-minute and we're
Okay,
almost at the number.
that's great. Just as long as council is taking this to heart, because what I saw last week was Mr. Sturdivant raise the fact that the municipal PAC had been very concerned about the quality of this document. And there was no discussion about that at this meeting. And this council owes a duty of care to look at least as closely as I have at this and really ask if this is enough to hang your hat on losing a water source that once gone will never be regained. What's the rush, really? What's the rush to have a public hearing before this council faces an election? And what's the rush to lift this designation? It's the private interests of a handful of property developers as against the water security of the village of Chester. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker? Somebody else had their hand up, I know.
Yes, so good morning, Warden, councillors, and staff. I want to thank you for providing me the opportunity to speak today. I'm here to provide comments regarding...
I know your name and everything.
Oh, sorry, and I should know. I'm Trudy Payne, and I live 5 Walker Cut in the village of Chester. Sorry. I'm here to provide comments regarding the decision that was made last week at council concerning the proposed village planning bylaw. I would like to state that I'm one of those residents that spoke directly to my councillor and several other councillors about the proposed bylaw, as I was uncomfortable speaking at the public hearings. However, I now feel I need to speak publicly. I am one of those residents that supported what was being proposed. I got the sense from watching the council meeting that some councillors and public members questioned Councillor Wells, and that he did indeed hear from others who live in the village who supported the bylaw. I cannot speak to how many he may have heard from, but I know that he heard from at least one. I normally don't speak on behalf of others, but I will speak on behalf of my husband, who also supports the recently revised bylaw. We supported council's decision in July to send the bylaw back for further revisions, as we too felt it was not ready to be approved. However, after attending the public hearing in September and listening to the staff's presentation, we felt most of the issues raised in July were addressed in the revised bylaw. In fact, I left that meeting feeling that the proposed bylaw was supported by the majority of councillors. So I simply asked, what did you hear differently from the public input session last week than what you heard at the public hearing that would have changed your mind? I watched the council meeting on YouTube as I was unable to attend the meeting. Councillor Wells brought forth a motion to approve the second reading of the proposed bylaw. He gave the rationale that a great deal of work has been put into this document over the past 3 years by the Planning Advisory Committee and staff, with council staff and the advisory committee seeking feedback through a number of community meetings, in which I believe the number of 30 was provided by the warden at the second public hearing, including the 2 public hearings. These meetings would not include the planning advisory and council meetings, where this may have been discussed, which are also public meetings. It was stated that the document that was being presented was about 80% in the step in the right direction, with the recognition that some work still needs to be done, which I believe was a statement that all councillors agreed with. Councillor Wells suggested that council approve the proposed bylaw and also recommended that a second motion come to the floor to send the matters that still require some work to go back to the Planning Advisory Committee, and that amendments could be made to the document at a later date. As was stated a number of times at both council and the public hearings, this is a complex matter, one which council has been working on for 3 years. The recommendation by Councillor Wells, in my opinion, seemed like a rational approach. By Councillor Wells' motion being defeated 4-3, this means as a village we are continuing to function under a bylaw that was approved in 2004, which was 20 years ago. As we all know, things have changed over the past 20 years, and in particular over the last 4 years, with housing being one of those challenges, not only in this municipality, but every municipality across Canada. There are programs and regulations being put in place by both the federal and provincial governments to try to address some of these challenges. It is crucial that the municipal level of government needs to develop bylaws and regulations to help address these challenges in a strategic yet timely way. I also support trying to diversify our community. I listened to a number of speakers who suggested the growth should take place in the more rural areas of the municipality, which I'm not opposed to, but I also support having some growth in the village as well. We often hear from businesses they cannot get workers, and we hear from potential workers that they cannot take jobs because they can't afford the rent in the more poor areas. Diversifying and providing different housing options would enable people to move here, as they could walk and have access to the amenities that the village provides. Living in a more rural area often requires a person owning a car, as we do not have a good public transit system in the municipality, which is another complex issue. As we know, some cannot afford a vehicle either. I am simply asking, do we not want to try to diversify our communities? Do we not, for example, want to keep our youth in our communities? Do we not want to attract others to our community? Again, all complex issues that I do not expect answers to today, Just wanting to make the point that municipal government is complex business. Listening to the council meeting, I heard it mentioned a few times why the hurry to get the bylaw approved. As you yourselves have stated, this is a complex matter, one which this council has been working on for 3 years. As we are all aware, there is a municipal election being held in October. We will see new council members around this table. 2 of the 7 people currently sitting at the council table will not be returning as they have not reoffered. There may also be an additional 3 new faces around the table as 3 of those reoffering are being challenged. Doing the math, there is a potential of 5 new faces sitting at the council table. The village seat guaranteed to be a new face. The municipal level of government is complex, not just in the planning world. It will take time for these new councillors to be brought up to speed on all matters, not just the village planning bylaw. I know we cannot go back to the vote as it was defeated. I am here today to respectfully ask that this matter does not get further delayed and that this continues to be a priority of this council. I recognize I may need to come and speak to the new council today and make this request. I also request that the work completed to date on the proposed bylaw does not get thrown away. I hope the course of action that will be taken is a revised bylaw to be brought forth for council's consideration that addresses those couple of outstanding matters, and that we have a new bylaw in place sooner rather than later, ideally before the end of this fiscal year. I understand that water, or lack of, has been and continues to be an issue in the village. I agree this matter should be addressed. However, I do not feel that delaying approving an updated village planning bylaw is the solution in addressing this matter. Having a reliable water source is important to sustaining communities and helping them grow. This is a complex issue that should be addressed outside this village planning bylaw. If not, we'll be required to function under an outdated bylaw for some time to come. I would also like to state that I don't think putting a moratorium in place on development is the solution. What we need is a current bylaw that helps address the current challenges facing municipal government balanced with the needs of the community. If a moratorium was to be put in place, would that mean current developments underway that have permits in place be halted? I'm not sure. I suspect placing a moratorium may have legal implications, but I'm not a lawyer. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank staff, the Planning Advisory Committee, and Council for all the work you've done on the to date on the proposed bylaw. I hope this is work that will resume shortly after the new council is voted in, and that we do not have to wait 3 years for the next public hearing, but rather only a few months. I want to thank you again for enabling me to address council this morning.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I'm actually here on a different matter. I'm here because I saw that I'm sorry, yes, my name is Rebecca McCarthy. I live here in Chester. And
sorry, could you turn your mic on there if you wouldn't mind?
Sorry?
Just, thank you very much.
Is that good?
Yeah,
yes. Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Rebecca McCarthy. I do currently live in the village of Chester. And I'm here because I saw that the Zoe Valley Library is on the agenda today. I'm here to, I know I did write a letter of interest that I think was forwarded to a couple of you, but I wanted to come and introduce myself as somebody who's interested in taking over the caretaker position at the library to continue its functioning. So I don't know what the intention is for the library at this point, but here I am introducing myself and telling you that I think that I am fully capable of taking over that position and continuing the functioning of the library, and perhaps injecting a different energy and maybe a new perspective on how it's run. So I am a single person, and it was expressed to me that a man might be required for this job, but hopefully I can show you that I do have these skills and experience and qualifications to keep it going as it is. And so just to give you a few, my technical, administrative, and handy skills, I have landscaping, gardening, and yard work experience. I have experience using small tools. I significantly repaired a deck recently. I have a diploma in geographic information systems, cartography, and geovisualization. So I have mapping, graphic design, and web design experience. I have database management experience. I worked for the Government of Canada for the Housing and Homelessness Department in Ottawa. I'm educated and I've worked in education. I have an undergraduate degree from McGill and with a specialization in Canadian literature, relevant for a library. I have a master's in education. I'm certified to teach in PEI. I'm certified to teach English language, and I have 15 years of international teaching experience. I am engaged currently and in the past with my community and in the arts. Myself and a group of people are about to launch a program at the high school to teach kids on plant-based eating and affordable living, eating. I am the coordinator and moderator at Seniors Connect NS, which is a phone-based outreach program for seniors across Nova Scotia. I am involved in Musical Friends. I'm a teacher for an after-school program called Musical Friends. I'm involved in Growing Friends, and I'm the project coordinator for several Growing Friends projects, as well as a cooker of very large meals up to over 100 people. I volunteer at the Chester, I was volunteering at the Chester Art Center, and I was an employee at Amicus Gallery in the Village. I grew up performing at the Astor Theatre in Liverpool, and I've taken part in the Chester Drama Society, and was recently elected secretary of the Chester Drama Society. I once did a walking tour in historic Liverpool, so I have experience doing historic interpretation. I opened a couple of hostels in Scotland once upon a time. I'm currently involved in the ukulele group at Shoreham, the Shoreham Retirement Community, and I regularly serenade at the Shoreham Nursing Home. In terms of linguistic skills, je parle français aussi. I speak Spanish to some extent, and there may not be much relevance, but I also speak, read, and write basic Korean. I have lived and worked in 8 or 9 countries, and I've been to about 40, so I have a global perspective as well. And I was an advisor for a USAID district water sanitation and hygiene project in Timor-Leste in Southeast Asia. So I have a lot of ideas for Zoe Valley Library, like writing workshops, book clubs, guest speaker series, and of course partnerships with local communities as well. Many of the communities I've mentioned I'm already involved in. So, as I've said, I don't know what the intentions are for the library, but I just wanted to show you that there is somebody that is willing and capable to keep it going.
Well, it's good to have met you and good to hear all this. Obviously, this is not an interview.
No, certainly not. Certainly not. No. But I just wanted to, like I said, let you know that there is somebody that can make it happen.
We are getting a verbal update in a little while.
Wonderful.
Just where we are with all this.
I'll make a comment.
Yeah.
Greg, we did get I'm one of the trustees of the Zoe Valley Library, and we did meet last week, and your name did come up. You will be contacted because they're putting a process in place to sort of let everybody know that the custodian moved out on the last week.
Mm-hmm.
So we're coming up with
an expression of interest.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And you will be contacted about that because you did reach out, as a number of other people have.
Great.
But haven't met you, nice to meet you, and look forward to going through a process and coming up with the right fit for the library.
Hey, good. I'm glad the library is going to stick around.
Well, it's up to these, it won't be up to me.
Okay.
I have very little say around it, as you know.
Sure. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else we're getting short? So if there is not, Ms. Black, you're back up. Your 9 o'clock appointment at 12 minutes past.
Thank you very much. There are some documents that are in the agenda package, and I just I guess I'd actually like to follow on your comments, the residents' comments about momentum and moving forward, and that's.
Sorry, did you send, I don't think we received any documents from you.
Just the initial documents
Yes.
you were going to send.
I know, I was working on the transcript and I realized I stopped basically working on the transcript for various reasons. But there is my email, there are 2 pages that can I, because I don't actually, I'm not able to access it right now on my computer, so if I could look at it here. Yeah, so this was circulated on the 12th as well. And at the meeting, council heard from Ms. Wilson, who was expressing the residents' appreciation for this process, that actually it had moved quite far from the first public hearing in July with the amendments, and also the desire to keep up that momentum. And she even said, maybe this could go back to the planning department and more amendments could be made, and it could come back even to this council, that maybe there could be another public hearing before the end of this election term. How it played, and we had on the table from staff the draft motions, and one of them would have facilitated that actually. But because Mr. Wells brought his vote, and because it was, his motion, and because it was seconded, that was no longer an option. So we entered into a sort of live or die scenario, where now the documents have gone back to the PAC, and with instructions that we are to work with the existing draft. And so I guess the first thing is that we all sort of realized last week is this paragraph in the email from a development officer is that actually once the bylaws are through first reading, they actually have to be complied with, even though they are prospective. There's like a kind of overlay of the existing. So we were actually in a perfect holding position to address residents' concerns, in that there was a lot of talk at the meeting about how dangerous it was actually to vote against Mr. Wells's motion, that the village would be exposed to a lot of development. Hotels could pop up on every corner. There was a lot of catastrophizing going on, which quite honestly was quite frightening to listen to as a resident. Like it did leave us a bit shaken about how it had all played out, and that we had, through engaging in this and really trying to end up with documents that were going to be ideal, or as close as we could get it to addressing concerns, that we had ended up in this like dangerous place. Anyway, here we are. But I think it's important that council know that this is how it works, because I'm sure staff knew, but I don't think council understood where we were. I beg your pardon?
I want to let you know, I knew how it worked.
You knew?
I know.
Okay, yeah, I sort of figured that
We've
you
been down the
knew.
road before, I think we all knew how it worked.
Yeah.
No,
I didn't remember, to be honest with you. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ms. Connors, what did you
I
say?
was fully aware as well.
You were aware,
Yes.
because the solicitor was not aware. So there was a conversation between Mr. Warden, the solicitor, and myself, and I was aware, but neither of them were aware. So I don't
I
know.
just didn't remember.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to, I'm just, we were not aware. Anyway, the point,
I think I made it very
no,
clear
sorry,
to
Mr. Wells.
everybody what the result of that would be.
Well, yes, you said that we would end up back in the
Yeah.
old land use, but that's not what I'm talking about.
That's what you're talking. Sure.
Okay, well, it's not exactly to my point.
You want to put two of them in play forever.
Okay, and so anyway,
It doesn't work that way, it doesn't abuse.
Okay,
it's not responsive to my point. But in any case, I just want to emphasize that we felt we had made a lot of progress. We appreciated the engagement of council, and I would second what the resident from Walker Cut said about moving this forward. My understanding is that the proposed bylaws were to go to the village PAC, but I am not aware of them having arrived there yet. And if this council is not going to revisit this before the end of the term, could we at least make sure that there's a strict timeline in place to keep this moving forward? Because all of us would love to see this resolved before the end of the fiscal year.
And I agree, and we need to find the process that works, that gets the right engagement that people are comfortable with. I mean, We don't want to be 3 more years, I know that,
Nobody does.
you know, but we're in a position right now, which is where we are, and we have to send it back to PAC, at least for a start, to try to determine what changes we can make there.
I don't think it'll be very difficult, and I think that there are a lot of engaged citizens or residents, but I guess the question is, when will the Village of Chester PAC receive instructions
That's
from
what
So their
council?
next meeting, my understanding is their next meeting is October 8th.
It's
And so Garth needs to put his presentation together, put the report together that's going to them. They are working with the existing documents, and so it'll go to Municipal Planning Advisory Committee on the 8th. That's when they're scheduled to meet. And then whatever recommendations and wherever the discussion leads them, that will determine sort of the timeline from there, because if there are extensive changes, because one change in the land use bylaw could trigger changes in the municipal planning strategy. We have to make sure that the changes align with the strategy in the land use bylaw. So if there's significant amount of time to do those changes, that will determine when it comes back to council. But yes, staff is intending, we're hoping that it comes back by the end of this year, but that is not a guarantee. We will also have to spend time now, because it cannot, in the time frame by November 7th, that's when the new council, so our last council meeting, I believe, is the 10th. And so there's no way that we can have a discussion on the 8th and have it come back to this council for the 10th. So it will have to go to the new council, and it will take time to bring them up to speed on the process. What's in the documents, it is starting, the documents aren't starting from scratch. The education of the committee, the new council, will be starting from scratch. So that is where we are.
And is there not a mechanism, and you said municipal PAC, but you mean the village PAC?
Sorry, village PAC, yes.
And is there not a mechanism by which the PAC itself could hold a meeting earlier than October 8th? We're only at the 19th of September right now. And I'm not saying that to impose pressure on this council to deal with it before they go, but to...
There may be a mechanism, but from a staff's point of view, they've got work to do before it goes to that, and they need time to do that, so. So generally the package is out a week before, so that would mean that they'd be looking at having to have that ready this week really to get it, or early next week to get that in. I would have to defer to the staff, but my understanding is no, they can't get that work done with the other priorities they have right now as well. So, yeah.
Okay, well, I guess I've made clear how much we'd all like to move this forward.
Well, I think we all want to move forward. We want to resolve this issue, and we want the public to be satisfied with what we do.
So just a couple of comments, because I can't resist. Ms. Black, I was as well quite shaken to how it all went down. Still am. Actually, it's kind of fresh coming out here again today. Shocked, surprised, shaken. Thank you, Councillor Wells, for all that you did in terms of representing your community. So again, I guess it gives me a chance to say that right now. In terms of priorities and projects and staff time, I know that my community has reached out to me, because actually I've chatted about this a lot. There's been a couple of events, and I've been briefing my community, and so my community is actually saying, well, what's on the strategic priority list, Tina? What has gone to the side burner and the back burner? Because we've had staff commitment, which is justified and real. But there's a lot of projects on the go, so I know my district is hungry for some stuff to happen. So that's going to be my position, I think. I respect your opinion and your comments, Trudy, very much, right? So, and I'm not going to give up on this, don't worry. But I mean, again, I'm still shaking, right, in terms of the time, the volunteers, and I think I will make it a note to come out on the 8th, did you say?
I believe it's October.
Yeah, the 8th. So I have sat in the audience, actually, at some of the village plan review meetings as we are getting closer to this. I think only 2, so I can't exaggerate. But I think I'll come out that evening, and if I have that chance, I'll be thanking the volunteers for everything that they've done as well. So I just had opportunity, so I'm speaking right now on that. Thank you.
Well, and I'd like to respond to that just briefly, if I may, because I did observe how upset you were at the meeting, Ms. Connors, and I was wondering, because you talked about listening to people, that you had listened to a lot of people and heard from a lot of people who were expressing an alternate view from the one you were hearing at these meetings and at the public hearing. And I was wondering about that, and I was wondering if the upsetting part of it relates to affordable housing, oh, no, okay. Okay, well, I also, in the interests of, full community engagement, it would be really helpful to know what other people's concerns are, because I actually, maybe naively, but I genuinely believe that there's room in this process for everybody to be heard and to have amendments reflect their needs. So hopefully those people who you were referring to, it's very helpful to hear from this resident today, and actually I feel that we're very much aligned in wanting to move it forward and wanting to increase housing at an affordable rate for people. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so we're on to 5.1, Committee of the Whole. Any errors or omissions in those minutes?
I'll move we approve the minutes.
Seconder?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. 7.1, Arts and Culture Strategy Update.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, morning. I just wanted to supply council with an update on the work that has been completed so far, and that we're in line to be completed by the end of this year. So public survey has been completed. We received 75 responses.
That's pretty good, really.
Thank you. Our town hall engagement sessions have been completed. We did 8 around the municipality, hitting Hubbard's and Blandford area, Chester, Western Shore, and New Ross. So we had a fairly decent turnout for those. It was definitely quality over quantity when it came to the conversations, but very good information out of that. I think our timeline is on. There you go. Just wanted to show literature review has been done by the consultants. They have the bones of the strategy together. We're doing a few more one-on-one interviews in addition to the series that we've already done. We've connected with local artisans around our municipality and a few provincial organizations as well to get their expertise. And we're continuing making some connections, just a few gaps that we have. We've made connections with Basohova and Swaganagity as well. And we're having chats with the Black Loyalist Heritage Society and the Black Cultural Center to get their input on areas of growth in arts and culture that could be in our municipality. And that is about it so far. So you have a summary of the survey in there, you have a summary of the town hall sessions, and a summary of our SWOT that we did at the town hall as well. We'll also be adding a cultural asset map to the final strategy and implementation plan.
If you were to summarize what you believe you've heard and what possibly we can do, what would that be?
I think the biggest spots for the municipality, so far you'll see we have 6 key priority areas in there that have been pulled together so far. But specifically for the municipality, besides also finding partnerships in and outside, improving information for the public. That was a big one, even with the public and within our groups as well. They're all volunteer run, they only have so much capacity. So providing that channel and helping build their capacity, finding partnerships there with them. And I guess getting funding was brought up as well, as always. And then also spaces, increasing opportunities. So working at physical spaces for
these types of events.
Yes, for any arts and culture events, just to increase it. So that'll be part of our cultural mapping as well.
Andre?
How's the feeling of the committee? Are they happy that this is proceeding? Are they, what's their feeling about all this activity?
The steering committee, they've been very happy with the work and the engagement, and they're excited to see what will come out of it.
It's a big committee. But,
yeah,
good.
No, and they've had some great input. I forgot to mention that municipal staff have also had their interviews with the consultants. So a lot of information is getting pulled together. But no, the steering committee is extremely happy with the work and where it's going.
Anyone else, any questions, comments? No, keep up the good work, and hopefully we'll come up with a plan that we can accomplish what we need to accomplish.
Thank you.
Okay, 7.2. Corporate strategic management growth planning.
Good morning, Council. How's everybody doing? Okay, so what you have before you today on this is a request for direction with regards to future growth nodes. So what I wanted to do though before we kind of get into the meat of the discussion is give a bit of a background of where we are to date on the growth planning process and why we're coming to you with this particular ask or request for direction. So basically since February of 2023, Council directed staff to move forward on a scope of the growth plan that we have right now. So what I wanted to kind of provide an overview is the work that has been done to date. So right now we're working with a consultant on population and workforce projection scenarios. So what we're looking at is where we see the municipality going over the next 5 to 20 years. Essentially to look at the different scenarios that we can envision if we have high growth, if we have medium growth, if we have, if we go back to lower growth that we've had previously. And the idea behind that is we really want to make sure that we plan accordingly. And also we want to know, hesitate to say it this way, but because it makes the most sense, also what our preferred option is. So because we can put tools in place to, for example, deal with our aging population by encouraging younger families to move into the area, by incentivizing that sort of growth in our area. Or if we really are trying to build up our workforce in the area, how do we ensure that we have housing that they can afford in the area? So we really want to make sure that our growth is both understanding what we anticipate, but also understanding what we would hope to see in the area as well. So we're working on those projections right now with the consultant. We've also begun, as I think many of you know, public engagement around the municipality to talk about growth and talk about the challenges with growth and the opportunities we have. So that began last week with a few hiccups, but it's underway now, and we have more engagement coming up in October and November around the different growth options that we have available to us. We've also done significant work on infrastructure planning that was completed back in the spring, looking at our wastewater infrastructure and where it could expand and where potential new systems might be required. Really looking at what we bring to the table when it comes to servicing. We also are working with a consultant on a housing policy analysis, something that we are using to try to identify what areas we believe will anticipate growth and what amendments we may need to make to our planning documents in order to encourage and incentivize housing that is the options that will be required in those areas. We're working on a workforce retention plan, an attraction plan to try to deal with some of those things we already talked about trying to encourage workforce in our area. And we also have a number of Housing Accelerator Funds HALF projects, as they're referred to. So if you hear us saying HALF, that's what we're referring to. So the Housing Accelerator Funds that we have through funding through the federal government. This includes things like moving towards online permitting. We've increased our junior building inspector capacity. So a number of different internal processes that can really support. Yeah, exactly. So all that work is underway, and it's been really essential and foundational to everything that we are going to be doing over the next few years. And at the same time, it's really continued to highlight, which I believe everybody around this table knows, the need that we have to target some of our efforts on areas where we really anticipate growth and what we are referring to now as these future growth nodes. So the one that is obvious, we've listed a few here in the document. We know that we're going to be centering around the highway exits and also the periphery of the village. Those are really the areas that we believe that we can see and expect to see growth and can support growth over the coming years. With the Hubbard's exit and exit 6 obviously being the most pressing opportunity and that we want to hear it for you, because that's what we're trying to talk about today. So what we're coming back to is really council in general in the past has in general suggested that we should focus on exit 6 as a test case or as the template that we can then use as we expand it out to the other exits or to the other areas where we anticipate growth. And what we want to do now is we're asking for council's direction to go and develop a scope of work to develop what we're calling a comprehensive community plan around exit 6 to not just look at the servicing needs for that area, but to look at it as a whole community. So how can we deal with the growth potential of the area, the servicing needs that it will require, what that might look like from a phasing perspective, what the land use and zoning should be in that area, do some designs of the roads and the streets and how we can really envision this coming together, active transportation routes, how it connects to other areas of the municipality and to the main arteries from the provincial side of things, what amenities and retail mix we need in the area, active transportation, recreation. He's really taking a whole community approach to this. So what we're looking for council's direction is to go develop a scope of work. And the recommendation that we put in here is to bring that back to council, but there is an option that you could just tell us to develop the scope of work and to speed things up, go straight to tender. So we wanted to make sure that we brought that in as well, as that rather than delaying the process, you could give us the direction to develop this scope of work, and as long as it's approved internally, we can go to tender and get this work started as quickly as possible. Were council a little more hesitant, we could as well, but another option is to just do a servicing study. So rather than looking at the complete approach, we could just look at the services that are required in that area to serve the incoming demand that we anticipate. Our recommendation, however, would be to do a more complete approach because of the fact that rather than just looking at one of our municipal strategic priorities, it would look at virtually every strategic priority that we have listed as a municipal council at the same time.
I'll just comment, I think we need to do one. We have to start somewhere. Really needs to be done. But we'd like to have it back to know the cost, because that may make us decide to go to number 2, another option.
So
I'm not comfortable with you just going out to...
The cost wouldn't be determined until after we get proposals back. So the question is, do we come back with a scope before we go out to call for proposals? And then presumably we would come back with the proposals and have you approve them, or you can approve the scope that incorporates all of those items that he just listed under the first option. We put the call for proposals out, and then we come back to council with
This is what it's gonna cost you if you do it.
With the proposals and the costs, because we won't know those costs until we go out and do the call.
Yeah.
My concern is, do you feel you've heard enough from the community? I know the issue with the meetings that we had, and they were a failure, and I understand why completely. But I don't think there was enough input from the public at those meetings that we really get a feel from what people want. I know the one in my area, people did not have the notice. I think they didn't even know the meeting was going on in your area.
No, I didn't get the notice until after the fact.
What people think about growth, that was the whole idea of it. And it was I might have been half a dozen people attended the ones, and particularly in my area, I think if people knew that it was going to be targeted for growth and if they want to have more input, that's my feeling.
Sure.
Yeah, just to respond to that. So just so everybody knows, we've been sending out a few of these notes. There were issues with the mailouts because and that was proposed, but so we do apologize. That said, we did have some decent turnout at all of the meetings. We probably had over the 2 days at all the locations about 40 to 50 people show up, which was not bad, get everything considered. At the same time, to address the concern, this would work side by side with that. So we're not considering the public engagement done for this. The scope of work would include engagement locally that would be targeted to talk specifically about growth in the Hubbards. Exactly. I'm assuming, like I said, we haven't developed the scope of work yet, but we would never go forward with a comprehensive community plan without targeted community engagement at the location where.
Well, that's going to happen, I'm comfortable with, but I think there definitely has to be community engagement and input from the whatever community we're targeting, it has to have input and have a say. So that's my concern.
Yeah, Tara and then Andre.
I just wanted to add that part of the discussion we've been having at the staff level is there's been, over the years, various different community engagements that have happened in that area. So the CAST, the DART, and I know they're getting dated now, right?
Yeah,
CAST, DART, the stuff that was done with the streetscape group. So we have talked about incorporating those at least as a desktop review as a starting point, and then going out potentially to do more engagement. And this is what we've heard so far. What do we need to do to update this, kind of? Yeah.
Andre?
I'm all for this, obviously. I think this is needed badly. Sometimes when we engage with the community, we sort of explain, what what do you, as in Councillor Shepard's words, what do you folks want here? But somehow we have to change the dialogue to explain that this is something that's about to happen. What do you want it to look like? And because there seems to be a bit of denial, or at least maybe not a thoughtful discussion about what the realities are. Currently, developers are looking at Chester and engaging with engineering firms to exploit the current land use policies as they are to build what they want. Because we don't have a thoughtful strategy about where we want density, where we don't want density. So it's just opportunity to acquire our lands, what can we do there, and how can we use engineering to circumvent whatever minimal safeguards we have in place to build the thing that we think the market wants. That's what currently exists. We don't have a plan that say we want density here, we want less density here. None of that's happening, and when we engage with the public and we just simply say, what do you folks want? Well, we can't just lock the door and say, stay out or whatever, and try to preserve what we have. It can't happen. We won't be able to keep it out. So I think we have to change the dialogue to, if we accept that this is gonna happen, because we can't keep it out, what do we want that to look like? Where would be, and there's going to be folks maybe that will be inconvenienced or are not happy about that, because nobody wants more. If you enjoy like a rural lifestyle and then suddenly you have all these people living next to you, there are going to be people that aren't going to be happy about that. But we have to be deliberate and thoughtful about where density. It has to go somewhere. It's coming, and it's going to happen haphazardly and sporadically otherwise, and it'll be far worse than if we don't plan it. And that's the concern I have with engagement, is that too often we just say, and we're too vague about the threat. And we just say, what do you folks want? And we don't really get a defined answer of, if we're gonna have density, it should go here. It's just vague, and as if we can not do it. It has to happen. There's too much pressure. The tides are rising, and our dam is not going to hold much longer. That's my comment on it. I'm all for the engagement. I think it's the first step, of course. We need to, I don't know who you have in mind for a consultant, but we need those Akistics, Bollock McKee kind of companies that have experience with planning communities that come in and explain, then make their, not engineering, but make their visionary people that are really good at saying, this is where, in this kind of area, these are very sensitive areas that we want to preserve. And then, so if you're going to put density, let's put it up here to preserve that, but here's the way you can link the two things, They're good at that. Engineers aren't good at that. We just do whatever people ask us to do.
I'm not against having a plan. I'm 100% in favor. But unlike Councillor Vino, I really want the public to have input in what happens in the community that we live in Harvard's area in District 2. And there are ways to change things if they don't want certain things, and that's I hope what this plan is about, that we are going to look at what the public wants, and unlike Councillor Vino, I want to listen to my constituents. I won't be there past October, but I believe, and I always have believed, and listen to what my constituents want. And I hope that this plan and what we're going to do does that. The community that I live in, I know I wouldn't live there if it looked like the tan town. That's not where I want to live. And I think it's important to listen to the community and what they want and where they want growth, targeted growth, whatever you want to call it. It's going to happen. I agree. We have subdivisions going in and more things are going to happen. We have a development permit for a 53-unit building down in the lodge. So yeah, growth is happening. And I agree with the plan. I also agree with listening to the public. I won't be a councillor, but I'll be at the meetings, and I will have a voice about that. So, thank you.
Well, you speak to that first, then I'll.
Just to speak to kind of the two together, which is we definitely want to both listen to the community and also put forward a vision. So that's part of to kind of respond to build on what Councillor Vino was saying. Our goal is to work with somebody that can not just look at, this is why we're proposing not just servicing, we want to look at the whole community and provide people with, this is what it could look like. I hesitate to go too far into renderings and things like that, but the idea is to kind of talk about, here's what we envision for our community, and does this resonate with what we as a community want? And at the same time, though, we need to recognize that if it's not this, it's something else, because the growth is coming, right? Exactly. So I understand. So
Yeah, growth is inevitable, and how do we manage it as best we can? Make sure the services that are required are in place, and that you try to preserve the character as much as you possibly can while you're doing that.
Thank you. So thank you for the update, much appreciated. And before we came in today, for this to be on the agenda, I went back in my notes and I looked where we, of course, had received on August the 28th communication from Jennifer in terms of updating us and giving us an update and a heads up. Again, I'm sorry, not even a heads up, because we were aware of this, what was coming. And certainly the linkage is back with our growth strategy, if you want to, that's what's on the agenda, is in bold letters. But I appreciated Jennifer's 5-page document and how we're linking it back to certainly our economic development strategy, August 2013. So this is not new, right? This is not new. We've known about it. Most of us have been here maybe since 2013, Derek, sorry, right? And also too, speaking firsthand, linking it to the partners, the local and provincial partners, and they're listed there, whether it be, AHT, our health center, the RINC, New Ross Regional Development Society. I've seen it come to the table at the New Ross Regional Development Society, and I would think that that's no different than, let's say, the Hubbards and Area Business Association. So I appreciate the engagement and the communication, and you can't lead a horse to water, right? So, and all of the above. So I'm excited that this is happening. I was excited. I wasn't happy that the flyer came out the day of the event in New Ross and in Chester Basin. And I especially wasn't happy that page 1 was missing, right? It was double-sided with full page 2, right? So that's okay, because I got some phone calls and had conversations, so it was engaging, right? And I was glad that I was able to be there, because I knew about the dates, following it on, not Voices and Choices, but Engage Chester. So I knew about the dates, and I was there, and I was able to hug the entire time. Actually, it wasn't just me there, but to be able to drive discussion to the downtown, to the Hamlet area, around those infrastructure pieces that we need, infrastructure related to wastewater and water, actually, so I was able to take that opportunity. So I was excited for those reasons. Again, I'm a municipal councillor, but I'm, in New Ross most of my times. So thank you for everything, and I'm looking ahead to, continuing the train, keep on going, right?
I'm just looking, so obviously this is going to, a lot of talk about planning when, what the zone is in that area. So we just did all that over, obviously. So I guess what I'm asking is, when they do the scope, you're going to include it, because it could be major changes in zoning, obviously, or will it?
Tara wants to speak.
I was just going to say, what the discussion we've had so far is, if you think back to the Highway 3 Streetscape plan, you go through, you do that plan, the vision, the larger document, and then a second part of that process is to look at your planning documents, your municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw, and figure out what needs to change in that document to implement the plan.
Okay.
So this isn't specific to asking what zoning changes do you want. This isn't a review of the land use bylaw and MPS right now. This is a specific sort of visioning exercise and plan for that area, that we would then need to go in and dig into our land use bylaw.
Thank you.
And that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another
Yeah.
process, yeah.
But I would presume that, from this, there could be changes.
I
Like
would
in my mind, even just based on my limited amount of feeling around and what I see as potentials, I feel like even some of our existing, I think some of the proposed developments and some of the the few development agreements we've processed and things. For example, the mixed use zone, I feel like it should have like a density cap of so many units per acre or something like that, because currently it's, I think, 11 units almost as of right per PID, but it doesn't give a size for the PID. So like those kind of like loopholes make it easy to exploit when you're a developer and you're trying to, it's a business model that you're trying to adhere to, and you're trying to create a product you believe that you can sell, and you're looking at what the rules are, and you can sort of take a piece of land and chop it up into little tiny pieces, and then you can pile on the units. So things like that, I think that should be, we could look at that as things to close up. At the same time, you may say, well, this is an area where we're sort of okay with more density, and maybe something might emerge from that we may end up creating a zone or something like that that allows it.
At the end of the day, land use will certainly come into play. Policy, yeah. So I just have one other question. I understand that this is a separate project. We'll focus on the Hubbards, particularly around the intersection area, because we know that the twinning of the highway is going to impact us, and we better get ready for it. We're still going to continue to work at the other growth in the other areas, so I just want to make sure of that.
Yeah, and I can respond to that maybe by adding a little bit of extra context so everybody knows. So the growth plan, even though we talk about it as a singular thing, it's more like an octopus. So it has a lot of different tentacles going on at the same time. So the idea is that we're trying to ensure that we have long-term visioning, but also the short-term needs that we're dealing with at the same time, and they can happen at the same time, but they're all moving in the same direction, if that makes sense. So,
Okay, thank you. Okay, what do we want to do, people? We have a recommendation.
Is a recommendation to go directly to tender, or is it come back to council?
No, it's not to go, it's recommended that direct staff to develop the scope of work to initiate a comprehensive community plan. Once they do the scope of work,
Then that's up to council whether you would like to include in there to bring that back, or if you would like us to go right out to tender and then come back with the proposals that we get.
That's the one unanswered question, isn't it?
yeah.
To come back.
Come back with the scope?
Well, I'd like to see the scope of
What we
work.
do is we understand what we're getting.
Yep.
You probably
That makes sense,
are
that's
pretty
what-
close to knowing what the scope of work is.
it'd take a little bit, but yeah, it's pretty much laid out here.
Yes, I know,
Yeah.
so I mean, it won't take you very long to do the scope of work and bring it back to
How much
us.
will it delay it by bringing it back instead of going directly to tender?
And this is a decision for you guys to make, but obviously it's not likely to come back before the end of this council term. So that's one of the things to consider. Yeah.
You wouldn't have the scope of work before this council term?
We usually, timeline-wise, it would be tough.
It would be tough. It has to go through a review with, we would usually review that with the planners, because they're going to be involved. So Brian is leading this, but he'll have to engage with the planning department.
And they're very busy.
He'll have to engage
Yeah.
with our engineering department, and we'll have to engage with our procurement officer to make sure that the scope fits so there's steps to be done before we bring it back to council.
Yeah, well, I guess I kind of understand what the scope of work is.
You said most of us laid out here.
Yeah, so I mean,
Is there a motion?
well, no, nobody's made a motion.
I'll make a motion that we proceed with option one and go directly to tender.
We have a seconder,
Second.
seconded, discussion.
It may not even be from the council being sitting at this table, and I think it needs to come back. That's my opinion.
Not
I don't
costing.
see the issue with it, how it's gonna cost us any amount of time. If you get it ready, you can go to the next council meeting once it's ready, so it's a couple of days difference, so I don't see the big issue of trying to rush it through without council having an opportunity to look at it.
Actually, any other comments? Well, there's a motion on the floor.
Yeah, I respected Floyd for his area, said that he'd
My area. Yeah.
like the community to have some input. That's important.
I mean, it's not a hill I'm gonna die on here, it's just, I'd like to see, if I'm not sitting here, that at least the council that is, or other chairs here, get an opportunity to see what we're moving and what we're passing and what's gonna happen. If they don't, it'll just come back, they have never seen this, so.
Well, you have to do the scope of work before you can go to tender anyway.
The scope, if the scope of work were to come back, it wouldn't come back until after the new council is sworn in, because that would be the November 7th, the November 7th meeting. And so we would bring that new council up, the new council up to speed, and before we would release. If you chose to go direct to tender, then the proposals would come back before they were awarded.
So just to be clear, your motion is option one.
We wouldn't have awarded anything though.
Right.
So that's the motion, right? Option one?
We added the addition that we go directly to tender with it.
Okay.
Not that,
That's not in option one as it's written, I don't believe.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Verbal updates, Zobel Library.
Yeah, so I think this is me, and I've got Tim here as the treasurer because he's been involved in the discussions, and Councillor Wells is here as well, and he's one of the trustees. So just to bring council up to speed on some of the activities that have happened with the library. Glenn and Lynn, I'm sure as you are aware, have officially retired from the library. They've spent the last 30 some odd years, I think it's about 30 years now, managing and operating the library in conjunction with the trustees. And so, first of all, I wanted to say to them that we're very appreciative of their dedication and efforts to ensure that the library remained viable and that it continued to contribute to the heritage of the municipality and the community. So to bring council up to speed on where we are then, we own or hold the property in trust, and it's to be used as a library, managed by the trustees. Excuse me, and we manage the endowment fund through the treasurer, or administer the endowment fund through the treasurer with direction from the trustees. So it's to be used as a library and other community uses as agreed upon by the trustees. So we're in this position now where the trustees have been employing or under contract, under agreement with Glenn and Lynn to live in and maintain that property. Now that they've moved out, we're in this transition period. And so while we're in this transition period, a number of staff, Chad and myself and Tim, have been working with the trustees to sort of figure out what their next steps might be, because we do have a vested interest as we own the property. So right now we have had a meeting. We had a meeting with them before they left. We have sort of an understanding of what needs to be done to the property to winterize it and all of that kind of stuff. We have the keys. And so we are working with the trustees. They've received a number of unsolicited proposals. Great, some of them are great proposals. They all are great proposals. They all have a different take on how the library could proceed and operate. Those will be considered by the trustees. But right now they feel that because they've been unsolicited, they need to go out and do their due diligence, issue a call or an expression of interest, a call for proposals, to receive additional formal proposals. So the people that have already submitted, we will reach out to them. the trustees will reach out to them. We are helping them develop that expression of interest just because they have that. Yeah, we have that interest in there. So we're working with them on that. It'll be a short expression of interest that we hope to have out. They hope to have out this week or next week, probably next week because we're at the end of this week. So they'll release that expression of interest, and I think the intention is that they receive proposals until the end of October, and then they hope to have a decision made and something in place shortly thereafter, right? End of this calendar year-ish. So that is the situation right now. In the meantime, there is a little bit of involvement with our staff because we own that property, so they don't have a caretaker right now. So we want to make sure that it is adequately maintained. So we're going to go in and do the shoveling and I think there needs to be 1 or 2 mows of the property. It won't be a significant amount of time because it's a small property. But just, so not the gardens, because that's a significant discussion and different discussion.
But we gotta keep the lawn.
We gotta keep the lawn mowed and we gotta keep the sidewalk shoveled. The trustees have been working with some community members to set up sort of a Friends of the Library. And they intend that they will have something in place to continue the library hours through the end of this calendar year. So they are working on that, and I just wanted on a volunteer basis. Yeah, on a volunteer basis. So I just wanted to bring council up to speed on that. I don't know if we've missed anything. Derek, have we missed anything?
I just think what we're really doing as trustees is looking at the model.
Yeah.
Because financially, it's probably not viable the way it's set up now. The endowment fund is shrinking. And I think they may need to come back to the new council and look for some direction on how to deal with the shortfall. So we want to look at a new model perhaps, maybe run a little differently. Financing and fundraising has been an issue. That has to be have an upper game on that. So I have to say the unsolicited applications, if I can call them such, were very encouraging.
They were.
And it's a jewel, not as well understood around this table as I think it should be. But I think this is an opportunity for the new council to really become familiar with Solval Library and hopefully keep it viable in the long term. So but I think the present model has to change somewhat. We just don't know how yet. So we're interested in everybody having an opportunity to present an option or a proposal, or say the ones we received are unsolicited, but again, we have to go up to everybody and give everybody an opportunity to, because most people still don't know that the custodians have left and it's now, we have to start, not from scratch, but it may be from scratch in the sense or maybe totally new.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure I'm right, but we have to maintain it as a library or else we lose the property, don't we?
First back to the
Returns to trust.
Returns to trust, yeah. So, I'm not sure that the general public understands that particularly well.
No, nor would they. It's,
I would agree with Councillor Wells. It is a jewel in the municipality. It's really a jewel. Brilliant idea around the Friends of. I mean, we see it all the time with different museums and events. What are the current hours? You mentioned about maintaining the current hours to the end of the calendar year. So what are the hours of the library?
Tuesday and Thursday, I think 2 to 5.
Okay, so Tuesday and Thursday, 2 to 5. Okay.
And some weekends in the summer.
Okay, perfect. I would just mention to all of council, remind you that a few years back, at least during Municipal Awareness Week, as part of the fact that this is a jewel in our municipality, as part of the roster of Municipal Awareness Week activities and events, Councillor Asif and Tina Connors did an activity or did an event at the library.
We did.
Yeah.
On what? Oh, sorry.
Go, you know.
Just quick, you sort of brushed over the gardens, which I don't know, what's the plan to keep those maintained?
They haven't figured that out yet. It will need to be part of, so the call for proposals will ask for programming options, as well as open it to invitations to include groundskeeping and maintenance of the building. If the proposal that they choose doesn't include that portion of it, so somebody who puts in a submission may decide that they just want to do the programming aspects of it. They don't want to live there, they don't want to do the maintenance. Then the committee the trustees will have to meet again, and they will have to likely do a second call just focused on the groundskeeping piece of it. And hopefully they get some proposals around that as well. And if they don't, then at some point, this will all be coming back to council probably with a further discussion around how that happened, what's our role. I do know that our staff doesn't have, we do not have staff that will be able to do that, at least right now, that can do that level of landscaping and gardening.
But I guess I feel like, I know that the gardening season is winding down, but nonetheless, that's a big part of what that property is. And,
it absolutely is.
Even if we have to hire somebody to maintain it in the meantime or whatever, I would hate to see those gardens.
Yeah, so that'll be the discussion. That'll be the discussion that comes back, is if they don't get a proposal and they don't have a viable way to do that, it'll come back to council for consideration on what role do we play and do we expand our role there.
And one of the criticisms of those that don't understand the library property is that we don't do enough. We don't really, it hasn't felt as accessible, I think. So hopefully this is an opportunity for us to engage better and find other uses.
Yeah.
The unsolicited proposals are very, very interesting. Some call for extension of the existing model we live in. Others call for a different model where you're not living in. The building is used for something else, but the library still exists. But I think what you just said is the very front and center it has to have more usage, it has to have more of a welcoming vibe to it. Some of the things we've heard, nothing against the people that run it, they've done a marvelous job. But I think we have to keep up with the times a little bit. And I don't think it's been used sufficiently to warrant the cost. And we're looking at ways to revitalize it.
How do you bring more people in?
How do we bring more people? How do we include the schools?
Yeah.
That's one thing I've heard. But there are some. But we're looking for people with bright ideas, right? A lot of people have a lot of good ideas, and I won't be the trustee after the session, and so whoever the new trustee will get to work on that, and it's I think it has great potential, and I'm excited about what could happen. But it has to have the support.
That's what I was going to ask. I don't know if you can answer this, Derek, or not, but the endowment. So, do you know how roughly that'll last? Would you know?
I do.
Sorry.
So as Councillor Wells mentioned, that the last handful of years have shown reduced financial results, and that donation revenue is overall shrinking year over year generally, and expenses are going up as with everything else. And so for the past number of years, the library has been in a deficit position. They've been kind of eating into their endowment. I can do a little bit of technical detail here, but so as the treasurer for the municipality, I am also the treasurer for the library as part of the trust documents. And so how we manage their finances is they have their own separate bank account. Donations come in, they get a receipt for that. That money goes into the library's bank account. Expenses get processed through our accounting department and paid out of municipal funds. And then they would have an amount due from the library account to the municipality. Previously, well before I started here, the practice was that, periodically we would then transfer money from the library to the municipality to offset that due to from. Within the last couple of years before I began my role here, my predecessor, Malcolm, realized that with shrinking funds, he paused that process. A big part of that was because a good chunk of the endowment fund was locked up into specific investments that were long-term. And I came in and I continued that practice. So that amount due from the library to the municipality has been growing. It is still less than what they have in their endowment, of course. However, now those investments have matured, they're sitting in cash. So in the near future, I intend to then reestablish that practice and clear that balance, transfer that money back to the municipality. If the exact same operations were to continue and we were to continue to see losses year over year, based on what's been happening the last few years, we're looking at 3 to 4 years, a little less than 4 years of operating before they run out of money completely. So of course this is, what time then better than now to reimagine the operating functions and try and find a way to bring the library back into a more sustainable operating practice.
Well, obviously we know what it costs to operate the library because you're doing it. And I guess that would be one of the questions once you get the proposals from maybe the caretakers. And I agree with Derek. It needs to have a makeover, a complete makeover.
Maybe not complete, but I think there has to be some changes.
Yeah.
We have to get more active.
I think the part of the donations and the fundraising probably is one of the issues that have to be addressed, I guess. I mean, I don't know what the fundraising, was there active fundraising done there, Derek, was it?
The custodians in their contract, that was their responsibility.
That was their responsibility.
But in the last number of years, Glenn's been ill and there has been no
Sure.
It's another year, so.
Do you have figures on how much it costs to operate?
Yeah, so they have a December 31st year end, so I have the most recent financial statements that covers the calendar year of 2023 and 2022. Net expenses for each of those years was right around $30,000. And donations in 2022 were just about 10,000, and in 2023 were just over 5,000. However, with the cash sitting in the accounts and high interest rates, they've made up some of that in investment income. However, they're pretty consistently net loss of about $20,000 per year.
And apparently in the past, I don't recall, they had looked at maybe getting a grant through our grant process, but apparently they're not eligible. I'm not quite sure why, but that's not what we determined.
Well, as a property that technically belongs to the municipality, it wouldn't be a grant, it would be an operating budget item, I suppose. The accessibility of funding mechanism, I think, is less critical.
I know they looked at possibly looking at one of the, we'll never did apply for a council grant, but even if it was one of our personal ones, don't know if we could do it because it technically.
I guess just you mentioned accessibility, with that, I guess that's a public works question, but is that our property in the sense that we have to, make it handicapped accessible and what the province has mandated? Or is it? I mean, I don't know. Is that one of the...
So, for the terms of the trust, the municipality is the owner of the property. However, the operations, maintenance of the facility is entirely on the trustees.
Okay.
So essentially we're the owners kind of in name only. Like the decisions as to how to operate and maintain that property are up to the 3 trustees.
So that would be an interesting question if we're obligated from the province to, because that's sort of a gray area, really.
I'm certainly not qualified to answer that question.
No. So again, who's liable if someone falls in there?
It's insured.
Yeah, there's definitely insurance. That is one of the bigger.
And that's through the trustees. Okay.
Yeah.
3 trustees, one appointed by the municipality, one appointed by the Heritage Society, and one appointed by the Endowment Fund. Presently, Cynthia Lamson is appointed by the Heritage Society, Colin McDonald is appointed by the Endowment Committee, and
you were there.
I'm there at the municipality. I was there years ago as the council rep as well. tradition now, they appoint the counselor. I was on the trustees years ago when they appointed me, I was not a counselor.
There's a lot of issues that need to be addressed, and that's in the process.
Appoint me, you can appoint somebody who's not a counselor if you want.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Tim. Next one, 8.1, should be fairly straightforward. It's an invitation to the open house on Saturday, October the 5th at our health center.
Yeah, I got that added to the agenda. I had corresponded with our health center, and they sent this, I was chatting with them, and I asked them to send this to me, so I sent it on to Emily and Pam and to get it in the agenda, and I said that I would certainly try my best to be there. There's going to be, obviously it's an open house, you don't have to do 4 hours, but a number of tables, like trade show of sorts. I think the municipality is going to be there. I don't know if it's a municipality or the municipal rec department, but senior safety partnership and mental health and all of the partners that we are familiar with in terms of our communities and the outreach. So, yeah, thank you for including that in the agenda.
Okay. Okay, 10.1. Municipal election fees. Apparently there's some changes because we're doing it differently and it's all electronic.
Well, yeah, so council, in April, we brought a request for decision that indicated that a schedule of fees for the election would follow, and realized that hasn't. We need approval of a new schedule of fees, and there have been some changes because of the electronic elections. So we've been using the same sort of schedule of fees that reflects what would be required, the fees that would be required when we have paper-based elections and elections that require us to have polling stations and districts and stuff like that. So the 2012 and the 2016 elections were sort of those hybrid elections where we had paper and electronic voting, so we still did have to go out and do all of the processes and procedures that would be required as though it were a paper election. But the 2020 municipal election and the 2021 by-election in District 3, we have done that voting all electronically. We never came forward with a change in sort of the schedule of fees and how we calculate the fees for the returning officer, the deputy returning officer, assistant returning officer, all of those various different fees that we would need to have in a fee schedule. And so what we're trying to do is update the schedule of fees to reflect a reduction in the amount of work that we have to do. So when we're doing, and Pam and Sam, who has previously been the returning officer, can speak to this a little more informed than I can because I haven't been in that position. But as a returning officer and as an assistant returning officer, when you have paper elections, there are some processes and procedures that have to be done that don't have to be done with an electronic one, and a part of that is training, hiring sort of poll clerks and hiring the deputy returning officers, and then going and finding the facilities where you can have these and they have to be accessible, all of that. So there's a little bit of work. We estimate that it's about 20% less work to do the electronic version of the election. So what we have in front of you, and normally what we do is from one election to another, we escalate the costs by inflation, CPI. So we provided you what the 2020 fees were, what those would be escalated, and then what we have done is took the 2024 ones and reduced that by 20% to reflect that reduced amount of work, and given you a proposed fee schedule that reflects the 2024 with the 20% reduction.
We have to put it in place.
So I just want to ask a question there, if I could. So when IntelliVote does the quote or whatever they gave you for a price to do this, does it reflect acclamations as well or no? It just basically a cost is what I'm.
If there are acclamations, we don't pay for those districts. We only pay for the actual votes that were being sent.
Okay, good. Yep.
If somebody prepared to move, we accept the fee structure.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And that is the end of the agenda with one possible exception, and that is that Mr. Lamy has just asked me if we could go in camera for a little bit of brief legal advice.
Go again.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion is carried.